Hey, is someone else there? Very good video. Audio. Wow. Oh.
Recording in progress.
in the computer.
Okay.
This might not be quite as good, but you should still hear something with this. Do you have somebody you could ask?
I can ask them.
Oh,
Mike
Mike here.
says yes.
Mike says yes.
Okay. This
Thank
is
you.
not as good as it would be, but at least you're gonna get some audio.
Okay, Brian, thank you. My knight in shining armor. Okay, sorry. Now you can continue. I apologize.
Just a clarification on meetings. So part of what we thought our task is to visit towns. And again, I'll just throw out, this is my thought. One staff person and one person from our subcommittee would visit a town, or maybe two from our subcommittee. Would that constitute a meeting?
No, it's not a quorum of the subcommittee. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Came up with that idea.
That's why we had
So
to.
you can have 2 members of your committee attend.
Okay.
I mean, that's usually what happens. You know,
Right.
because there's going to be, you know, when we get to the point of discussing project delivery method, design build, design bid build with a general contractor, design bid build with construction manager at risk, right? There's going to be a need to check references. There's going to be a need to visit representative projects before you hire a builder. So the way that you do that is by assigning at a committee meeting, you say, all right, here's the representative projects we need to visit. Who wants to go to Bloomfield? Who wants to go to Guilford? Who wants to go to Newtown? And you know, just two. That's fine. No issue. If all of you wanted to go on a site visit, that's a problem. Because then that's a meeting.
If we do it like you never want a majority.
I've done those walkthroughs. There's gonna come, hopefully when you're building a project, you're gonna want a progress visit. And I've done it. And the way to do it, as long as it's safe, we have a limited number of hard hats. So you can't do it every week or even every month, but there's various milestones in a construction project where we can notice a meeting. And then anybody that comes to that meeting is welcome to come on the site visit, but cross that bridge when we get there. But for purposes of your question, 2 people is not a problem.
Okay. And then on public outreach that you spoke of, like the Berlin, right? So that's where, you know, I contacted the Lions, have the table set up, but the town is really, you know, they're moving ahead. The town staff is moving ahead to work with the architect to be there and all that kind of stuff. Kind of public outreach. I'm trying to understand what are our limits, or do we have limits on public outreach? Because I, for one, would love to be able to conduct public forums, or, you know, make sure the public is aware of these meetings so that they come if there's a special subject on it or whatever. But for instance, Rotary, they've expressed they'd like to see a presentation. PTOs have expressed, you know, want to see a presentation. That's all good input for us to hear, you know, comments if they have comments on the conceptual design.
Right,
But
there's a sequence of events, okay? There's no project. Okay, the sequence of events is the programmatical evaluation and determination occurs. Okay, once that occurs, there's a feasibility study that identifies alternatives available to satisfy the program needs of the town. If you then want public outreach so that you make the public aware of, hey, your tax dollars went to pay for this feasibility study. These are the alternatives that our professionals came up with. That's fine. We shouldn't be advocating as committee members for one alternative over another until you receive input from the public and you vote to recommend one of the alternatives, if there's multiple alternatives, to the town council. Because that gets into the code of ethics. We're all subject to the town ethics policy. I understand that there's a, you guys get a perfect star for your refrigerators at home. You're 6 for 6 in signing the policy. Everybody appreciates that. So So keep in mind that as, you know, as town officials, you don't want to give the appearance that you prejudged or predetermined or have a favorite in terms of which project you're going to recommend to the council until such time that you've completed your due diligence. The program's been identified, feasibility study's been performed, you've received input from stakeholders, and then you're able to actually sit here and say, all right, I recommend alternative A. I make a motion that we recommend alternative A to the town council, and you have your discussion and you vote. And then at that point, you know, you're free to express your personal opinion. Once the referendum process begins, then all advocacy from you comes to an end. And no town resources can be used for anything other than notifying electors, voters eligible to vote in a referendum of the upcoming vote, notifying them. You can get into this more detail down the road, but you can do explanatory text. There's a limitation under the State Elections Enforcement Commission laws about what we can do to notify voters, what we can't advocate, we can't use resources. And the reason for that, just had this conversation in another town about 8 hours ago. The reason for that is, think about it, okay? The town has more resources than probably any resident, right? Any individual resident. So if the town is able to use its resources to advocate for a position for or against the referendum, what chance does the taxpayer have against the resources of the town? So that's the public policy behind saying, once that referendum is set, no advocacy. Question, sir.
Yeah, so basically, right now, since this committee was formed and started, we don't actually have a project presented there.
No,
So
you
there's
can
really
make
no
people
point going
aware.
forward with that.
Absolutely, you have no project. You can make people aware that there is a senior center, community center committee that's been formed, and that what you'll be doing and what the timeline is for doing that, and that you'll be looking for public input. That's all fine. But to say to somebody, here's a drawing or here's a project, you haven't voted on any of that. There's no project yet.
See, I'm confused though, because this committee, I thought this committee is advisory to the council on what was presented and looking at options to what was presented already. The drawings were presented, the statement of needs were presented to the building commission. They went out, hired the architect. The architect interviewed the townspeople, staff, came to our commission meetings, went through all of that and came up with what would meet the projected needs that the whole commission put forward. So now we have this conceptual design, which is all it is, conceptual. And it meets the needs. The building commission even, I believe, voted on that and said, you know, we have met the needs of the statement of needs that were presented. And now, you know, we're ready for the council to decide what to do. And the council has decided to set up a subcommittee, as I understand it, to now look at that and look at how do you run it? How do you fund it? How do you run it? How do you fund it? What do other towns, what have they done? And how can we use those lessons learned? And I, like I said, I always include the why as a town. So, you know, look at options. An option might be that the town doesn't go forward with doing its own thing, but yet allow the why to do its thing. You know, that's an option. So that's what we understand. Now, if you're telling we're going back to the statement of needs, and you know, I don't think that that's right.
The minutes of the July 20th town council meeting, which created this committee, I have in front of me. And it includes the programmatical needs should be explored, discussed, and agreed upon. Potential options and alternatives should be explored, discussed, and agreed upon. Your role is essentially to investigate and recommend feasible options and alternatives for a facility.
I don't remember programming when it's being discussed, but again, we have them. And so if we're starting back at that, and now we're, you know, I just don't understand how we go there, but it might be wording more than anything, but the mayor's here, you have 2 council members that are here.
I mean, to that point, Jeff, you know, we already had land and site assessments done, right? The site was chosen to move forward with grant money to look at what we have. So I'm asking the same question. We have to go backwards.
Well, I don't understand what you mean, go backwards. You have a committee that up until 50 minutes ago, actually about 30 minutes ago, because it took a half an hour to get chair and vice chair, didn't exist, okay? So this committee has never recommended a particular project to the council. And if the council just wanted to go forward with what was presented in the conceptual drawing, it would have just gone to the PBC. You guys aren't a building committee. So,
They did go to PBC.
well, for the statement of need,
No, for the conceptual design.
but it's not they don't have the project. There's no project. There's been no request for an appropriation or a referendum or anything.
No, that hasn't, I think, well, again, I look to the council and to the mayor to tell us, but I thought this sub-advisory committee was to look at what has been done thus far by the building commission and look at potential alternatives, reduce the size, increase the size, take a pool out, don't put a pool in for these reasons. And you do that by looking at other towns and studying it. And at the same time, have people working on what does that do to our cost structure? In addition, look for funding alternatives and look at the Y as an alternative.
So how do we?
So how do you get there? Because that's
I think you just said this. I think we're saying the same thing.
I'm saying the same thing.
What Yeah, what you just identified when you said, take this out, take that, you're talking about programming. And the best
Okay.
approach
I thought you were talking
to
about.
providing the program.
Fine. I thought you were talking about like specific programs.
There's not a
the senior
project.
Center and the.
If there was a project, you wouldn't be looking at taking things out.
So to that end, I mean, to be fair, we sort of say like, all right, this is another thing for the public. I don't know what they would like to see. You know, I would say that like, okay, here's this is what we have, and if you like it, or not, but we could present what we've already discussed with the builder, the architects come over at this point and say, you know, should we add what we think that we can use that way to discuss the need.
But you guys haven't made a recommendation. That's why I'm saying the sequence is always the committee. You look at what the program is and you reach a consensus among the 6 of you. You 6 haven't discussed the program yet. You agree on a program. If you agree with what's been presented conceptually, that's the program, then fine. Move on to step number 2 and look at different alternatives that are feasible.
Step one.
You know what I'm saying? If you all agree, that's fine. Just say, you know what, we all put on an agenda for next meeting, discussion of program. And if you all agree that this is the program, this is exactly what the program should be, then you vote and you move to step 2, which is having a discussion with QA&M about how do we provide this? What are our options? Do we have only one option? Is building new the only option? Is there a renovation plus addition option? What other options are there? What aren't we thinking about? And if they come back to you and say there's only one option, then I think you got to start looking at other facilities and seeing how they did it, you know, and looking at the space and saying, you know, do we need, I just have the square footage in front of me, you know?
70,000.
No, I'm not, I know that, but you know, you need 1,000 square foot lobby. You need 20,
Right, that's
your administrative office is the size of my office.
yeah, we agree with that.
You
right?
have 9 people that are gonna need offices in there?
Yeah.
That's what 2,500 square feet can do. You know what I'm saying? So you start doing stuff like that. And you know, look, there's 2 ways you do these projects. And Brendan, this will resonate with you because you're in the business, right? You value engineer, which is a term everybody hates, right? You value engineer during the design phases. You get a schematic design, you VE it. You get design development drawings, you VE it. You get 50% construction documents, you VE it. You get 100% construction documents, you VE it. You put bid documents together and you bid items as alternates so that you have VE opportunities. You VE it and VE it and you VE it until it doesn't even resemble what the project was in the beginning. Or you VE it before you even get to schematic design by identifying what you need and what you don't need. And I go through this all the time. Somebody will come to me and say, we don't want to have to VE it. And I'll say, well, let's look at some of this space. What do you need this for? I'm like, well, you know, I guess we don't need a 5,000 square foot kitchen in our firehouse. 5,000 square foot kitchen. That's bigger than everybody in Berlin's house probably. Right? So, you know, you look at these things up front and it saves you a lot of time. And the other thing it saves you is aggravation with the public. Because the last thing that you want with the public is to sell them on a project and build something different. I see it all the time. You get the dog and pony show, the architect shows them the pretty pictures. I had one project where the architect showed them a model. Okay. And then years later, everybody's like, where's that model? This doesn't look anything like the model. And I begged them, please don't pull the model, because it always looks bigger and nicer and, you know, more state of the art than anything you could actually build with brick and mortar. So what I would really encourage you to do is really reach a consensus on the program, reach a consensus on what the alternatives are. And then once you decide, hey, this is what we're going to recommend, have at it. You know, let people know this is what we're recommending to the council. Coordinate with the council. You know, that's a big, big issue because you're their advisory committee. So if you want the council to, you have 2 members of the council that are on this committee. Every council meeting, there should be a report on the agenda from the 2 council members. The chairs, the council members. So you can give a report either every council meeting or every other, because you meet twice a month. And really, you know, you want the council support, work with them, if you're an advisory committee to them, coordinate with them. If you want to do public outreach, you know, let them know what you're doing so that they can support it as well. But again, I know I'm beating a drum here, but really until you know what project you want to recommend, because again, let's say you love this 70,000 square foot, which by the way, again, I love QA&M, but 2 things to keep in mind. First of all, this is a very crude way of estimating space. Because all they did was say, we got 57,000 square feet and we're going to multiply it times 120%. And the second thing is, with all due respect to all my architect friends, architects are notoriously bad cost estimators. Okay? You never rely, for better or for worse, on a cost estimate for an architect, especially in this market. To say that you're going to go spend $400 a square foot on this building. Okay, you want a cost estimate? Tell me what the project is. We'll do an RFP. We'll hire a professional cost estimate, and we'll get you a real cost estimate that reflects market conditions for what you want to build, instead of relying upon something that's conceptual. The architect, when you eventually have a contract with an architect to design and provide contract administration services for a project, will not be the cost estimator. It'll be the construction manager. So don't, you know, before we ever take any number to referendum, we're going to have a professional cost estimate. I have anything to say about it. Because the other thing that ends up happening is you have to build, you can't go back for money. Okay? You got to find a way to use whatever appropriation you get from referendum to get one, make your project work. So what ends up happening is when you have an estimate from an architect, you have bloated contingencies. You put a design contingency, you put a contractor contingency, you put an owner contingency, because you don't have a high level of confidence in your investment. So the town ends up bonding for more money than it needs. The way to avoid that, you need adequate contingencies. It's a best practice, but you don't need bloated contingencies. The way you avoid the bloated contingencies is to get a professional cost estimate done as the final piece. Once you know what the project is, get a schematic design, you do a cost estimate on that basis. And you understand that as design matures, the numbers go up. That's what happens. You go to design development, the number creeps up. But we have adequate design contingency to account for that. And quite frankly, this project from a construction perspective doesn't appear to me to be a very complicated project. It could be an expensive project, but from a construction, constructability perspective, there's nothing really unique or special that would cause you to want to spend $400 a square foot.
Right, so what we have on the website right now. Pretty much changed, sort of.
Well, people paid for it. So if you want to show the work product that they paid for, that's fine. But what I'm saying is, until you guys may reach a consensus that that's the project. But until you've done that, you really can't be saying to people, this is what the project's going to be. Again,
Don't go to the Berlin Fair and say, hey, come see the project we're looking to do and everything. Don't.
expectation management.
Right. I think Berlin Fair.
Donna had mentioned, how do you,
Public outreach to let them know, to get feedback from them.
yeah, this is a possibility.
Why not?
But Donna mentioned, that how do other towns sell this to the public? And there's some pretty tried and true methods, and it's really by expectation management. If you put the idea in somebody's head that they're getting a Ritz-Carlton, you build a Holiday Inn, nobody's going to be happy. Okay. If on the other hand, you put in your head that you're building a Marriott or a Hyatt, and you build a Marriott or a Hyatt, everybody loves you. But the goal here is programming. What do you need? What do the demographics of Berlin suggest you're going to need over the next 30 years? Because you're building a facility for the next 30 to 40 years. So look at what you need now, look at what you think you need in the future, make your programmatical evaluations, and the public, you want to hear from the public on program. You want to hear. Somebody comes to you and says, you know what, I moved here from Camden. And in their community center, they have pickleball courts. And I think that'd be, you know what I'm saying? You get one bite at the apple. So you want to do this in a very methodical way. I have a client that I'm doing the ice cream with. Felt that because they're telling me this is taking too long. And I said, I got a little my favorite saying. You want to do it the right way or the easy way? The easy way is just take something that an architect gives you and put it through, right? Because you think the project's long overdue. We've waited decades for this. Marx says 1956, right? We waited decades. Let's get this done. Then it fails at referendum, and you're back to square one. So you're better off, getting as much stakeholder input, feedback as you can, and really, you guys are good at that. You're good at knowing what people in Berlin want, and this is something you get them focused on. So having something on the website is fine, but really, what if people are going to come to a booth at the fair and ask questions, you can say, we haven't made a decision on a project yet. We're looking for you to tell us what your needs are, what your family wants, what would you see as a benefit to the town, and get that kind of feedback and aggregate it and take that into consideration when you're finalizing the program and talking to the architect. The architect needs to hear this stuff. The architect really needs a lot of feedback. They work in a lot of communities. They're not experts on Berlin. So you want to take all that feedback, you want to aggregate it, you want to share it with them, and say, you know what, this is the kind of thing, you've got a lot of, you've got a lot of emphasis on cardio room, fitness room, the weight room. We heard people want more arts and crafts. Why is the arts and crafts only 1,700 square feet, but the fitness and weight room are 7,500 square feet? When you get that kind of feedback, you got to give it to them. Because all that changes the cost. Some spaces have more MEP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, than others. That's a cost. So, an aquatic center, that's going to be a big cost. So get feedback. Are you going to use it? Is that something that you find to be a real benefit to the town? The gymnasium. If you look at the pool and the gym, it's probably 50% of the space. So that's gonna be, significant cost. Make sure that, that's what people want. I mean, people aren't gonna say to you, oh, I don't wanna lobby. I don't want 175 square foot calf. They're not gonna make comments like that. They're gonna tell you what they wanna see. And the hardest part about what you have to do is you're gonna hear a lot of different things and you're not gonna know, okay, a few people said they wanted this, but that's just a few people. And that's the beauty of having a committee, is you guys can bring all that in and have that discussion as a group and decide what the priorities are for the program. And then once you've decided that, then you get your feasibility alternatives, suitable alternatives from the architect. And you can really say to people, you know what, this is what we're going to recommend to the council. Okay, I hope that's helpful.
It is to me, because what I'm hearing, and is we are okay to do public outreach. Again, we have to be neutral. We shouldn't be advocating certain things. We need to hear from the public. Berlin Fair is a good opportunity to do that. Setting up other public forums is another good opportunity. Again, working with the council, but that we are able to do that as part of our task.
If that's what the committee opts to do.
Yes,
Individually, you can't make those
We all agree
decisions.
that that's right, but
Committee
we can
has to
do it
decide.
if we want to. And we can, okay, so the public outreach is, that's great. Okay, and I got it, that's good. As long as we want to do it. Which, hopefully we can roll out to.
Jeff, I just have one question. If Tim and Mike call each other, can they go visit something or a facility without first getting the okay from this committee? Can they just go out on their own and do what they want? I'm just asking because
If they do it without going through the committee, they're doing it as individuals.
as not members.
Not as committee members, but as individuals. And when they come back to the committee, they can say, hey, we took it on ourselves to go visit these places. And, you guys can listen to what they say or not listen to what they say. And say, it happens. I mean, sometimes you get input and it's helpful. Other times you say, well, we weren't interested in that, so who cares? Do whatever you want on your own time.
The one thing, on setting up meetings with the town, with other towns, I would just recommend that, like, we would have Jen or something set up for meetings. Obviously, we gotta be there, schedule our schedules or whatever, but Jen at least would be able to know the people better. Now, we might have some contacts in other towns or whatever that can be helpful, but
Just a suggestion. We can always get you into any building.
I guess the takeaway I'm getting, Jeff, is no one could sort of run the outlet on the permission. I'm not talking about visit a building, but you can't just go do public outreach on your own unless the community votes for it simply for a role.
Right.
right.
Just people can't put like can't write a letter to the editor saying we support this.
Right.
Right? You can't do that. The committee has to okay everything that we do.
The only power you have, I always kind of laugh when I talk about this because they make it sound like you're a bunch of superheroes. The only power you have is as a group in a meeting with a quorum that's been noticed under FOIA. So 24-hour prior with an agenda posted. That's the only power you have. When you do things individually, you're not doing them as an authorized member of the committee unless the committee has authorized you to do it at a properly noticed meeting report.
And then, like, in my case, I would stop, like, with the Berlin Fair, I got it going. I handed it over to the town, I said, you decide, whatever, but I would stop doing it because I shouldn't be doing that as an individual unless you authorize me as a subcommittee to be the contact to set it up or whatever, right? Yeah, I agree, I totally agree. So can I don't know if you've got the list of questions that were submitted, but I kind of, for my benefit, I'd like to kind of go through the questions that I submitted, so. My question number one, you've answered, so I'm set. You also talked about limitations that we would have, because we do wear different hats, like I'm chair of Park and Rec, Barbara's chair of Union. So we also would want to go back to those commissions and give them an update, if it's appropriate, of what the subcommittee has discussed, like the town council members would be giving an update. Is that fair to do, or we should?
You can give Parks and Rec an update of what transpired at a public meeting. If this committee meets an executive session, you can't talk about it.
Sure.
If you get documents, that are confidential in your capacity as a member of this committee, you can't talk about those with other boards and commissions. So what you can talk about at other board and commission meetings is what the public consumes in your public sessions of this.
Great.
Sure.
When I'm down at the senior center for these little projects that I go to, people do ask questions. So how much can I actually say? I have a concern about that. They ask what we're doing, how the project is going, are we making any headway? I feel, I don't know what I can say about that.
If somebody came up to you tomorrow and said, hey, what's going on with that project? You can say, we had our first meeting, we elected a chair and a vice chair, and we talked about the way that we're going to proceed, that it was our first meeting, and we're just getting organized. Stay tuned. The minutes will be on the website. And then for a while, you're going to be saying.
No, but if it's in the minutes that you read, because you were part of the committee, and that's information you can get out to the public.
Sure. And if for a while, you're going to be saying, we're studying a program, we're evaluating program. And then for a while, you're going to be saying, we're done with program, now we're looking at different options, we're getting input from the professionals, stay tuned. And then once that happens, you can say, okay, the committee voted, it's in our meeting minutes, we voted to recommend a certain option to the council, and that's where it's at. But, the idea isn't that these meetings are not secret. So unless it's executive session, or unless like I send you something, it's attorney-client privilege, because I'm communicating with you in my capacity as the attorney for the town, you're an agency in the town. So you don't disclose that. If the architect sends us information that we think is preliminary and therefore not subject to FOIA, we don't share that information that you got in your capacity as a committee member, because the rest of the town doesn't have that information. When you have it, we share the confidence with you. If you have any, look, when in doubt, Kate knows how to get me. Arosh knows how to find me.
Yeah, but it's safe to say that, right, that these meetings, anything that you discuss in a public forum, you can share with them.
Sure.
Because it's public already.
Yeah.
Right, it's not done in secret. Like this is being recorded. People can go and look
It's
at
on
the whole
YouTube,
meeting.
people can view it on.
Yeah,
Yeah, no worries.
so that's a good way to remember, right? That anything you discuss in a public forum, you can share with them, anyone, because that's public.
But, and I'm just gonna ask this, because Barbara put that in her question. Your personal opinion on certain things.
Yeah.
You should not. I'm saying it's more as a question.
Well, you shouldn't, because if you don't have a personal opinion yet.
I do have
because this is the first meeting of the committee, and you're independent like your 5 fellow committee members, and you're going to listen to all the information and gather all the information, and then after a discussion with the committee, you're going to form an opinion. Because that's what the ethics policy requires you to do. It requires you to be unbiased in discharging your responsibilities to the town as an appointed official to a town agency.
Now, once the committee votes on something, let's say, because I think you said this before, Jeff, at that point in time, as an individual, I'm not sure how this would really work. I personally won't do it probably, but if the subcommittee votes and it votes for this option to pass on to the council, and I didn't like that option. I am free to speak at that point. That, well, I didn't vote for it, because I didn't like that option or whatever. Is that true?
Well, you're free
I'm
to,
not
you're
sure.
free to speak, but read the ethics policy and be guided by what you're allowed to say, and you're allowed to say it. Because you're still a public official, you're still an appointed member of the committee, subject to the ethics policy. So you have to make sure that you conduct yourself in a manner that's consistent with the ethics policy,
Okay.
which involves civility and, not disparaging or defaming and that kind of thing.
Right, right.
So you're free to disagree. It's the manner in which you express your disagreement that you have to be careful about. And the other thing I wanted to mention, I mentioned no meeting by email. No social media meetings. This comes up all the time with my building meetings in the last 10 years on Facebook. Okay? You want to create a Facebook account. And what happens as soon as you create the Facebook account is people want to ask questions. And then they'll come to me and say, I know you told us not to do this, but we created a Facebook account for the project. If you have questions, and if we don't answer the questions, why do we have the account? And instead of answering questions, it becomes an illegal meeting. Because you're conducting business in secret. Only people who have a Facebook account, who join that group, who follow that discussion, have access to that information. And that's not a public meeting. That's not an open meeting. That violates FOIA. And FOIC is getting very, very, shall I say, strict and not worrying about quorums. Saying if you got one person from a committee talking about a project on Facebook, that's an FOI violation. Now, I don't agree with that, okay? But they're saying, you know what? You're conducting agency business. You're talking about substantive matters without noticing it as a meeting, so the rest of the town could be aware of it. Don't be scared of FOIA. That's not something, it's not something to be afraid of. It's just, the town has a very good reputation with the FOIC, especially Kate, as being a very open, transparent town. And when you're talking about a project that could, run millions, if not tens of millions of dollars, transparency and accountability and openness are of paramount importance to the credibility of getting a referendum. So we're not going to do anything in secret, and nobody has prejudged or biased opinions about anything. We're all going to listen to all the information. And if you think you have an opinion, you're at least going to be open to reconsidering your opinion once you know all the facts. Okay?
This is kind of going back, but it's important because it could impact going forward. So the town council, July 20th, approved the task list for the subcommittee, and also approved the subcommittee members, and it named a chair. Quite frankly, I didn't even have any part of putting that list together. I didn't even know that list was out there until July 20th at the senior center, when someone told me the list was there. So the town council passed those things. And then later on, it was decided, and I'm having this discussion with Mark, so by the mayor, to remove my name as chair. I didn't even put it down as chair. Someone else put it, whoever created that list, and town council voted on it. I just want to understand, what are the limitations? Can the mayor reverse a decision by the town council?
Well, actually, I was asked about the agenda for the meeting, and I said the first thing that needs to happen is a chair and a vice chair need to be elected. This is a standalone advisory committee. This is not a subcommittee of the town council. Right? The non-town council members that are on this standalone advisory committee. So as a standalone advisory committee that does not exist under the charter or town ordinances, this body should elect its own chair and vice chair. So that was Kate and I had the conversation. That's what I asked Kate to please do. I didn't, to be honest with you, I was at that town council meeting on Zoom, but I didn't pay any attention to appointing the chair.
Yeah, that's fine,
I
that's
didn't,
fine.
I didn't consider
That's
it because I knew, you know, it's
Okay,
not
that-
something that should
I'm
happen.
okay with the subcommittee
Yeah,
appointing its own chair. It makes sense. I was surprised actually, but I just want to understand.
So going forward, could it be, instead of being named as a subcommittee, could we call it like the advisory committee?
I would just call it the community / senior center advisory committee. Yeah, 'cause that's what it is.
Yeah.
Who are you a subcommittee to? You know, I mean, it's semantics because you're a public agency, you're subject to FOIA, subcommittees or something to FOIA, so.
But you know me, I like to. be-
No, accuracy is a great thing.
So,
Can the council or mayor decide to stop the subcommittee at any point
The
in time?
council can,
The council.
yes. Council at a duly noticed meeting with a quorum and a simple majority could terminate the committee. Happens in my town, as a matter of fact. They were looking to do an auditorium and a senior center. And after COVID, they terminated those.
Can they cancel a meeting that we have scheduled for the subcommittee to meet?
Can the
Can they-
council cancel it?
Yeah, could they come in and say, no, you're not gonna meet there, cancel that meeting and
No. You ought to set a schedule for regular meetings.
Right.
Because the difference between a regular meeting and a special meeting, other than usually have more notice for the public for regular meetings, is at a regular meeting, you can amend your agenda with a 2/3 vote. At a special meeting, you can't amend your agenda. So if you have a regular meeting schedule and something comes up between the time your agenda is posted and the meeting, you can amend the meeting and it helps you be more nimble and flexible during that your business. So we recommend that you adopt the regular meetings.
They want to have a discussion about. Fit it in?
can you add it with the 2/3 vote?
No, it's a special meeting.
Oh, this is,
I mean, I don't see an agenda item that will allow you to add that.
how about the review of tasks? That's outreach. Task A is outreach.
So you're saying review of tasks under agenda item 4?
Right.
I don't, that's,
Mr. Chair,
it's not gonna be fatal to anything.
Brendan, sorry to interrupt. I just cognizant of just time, maybe has a hard stop, okay, 2 minutes. But right now, probably, so.
I think it was 22 minutes ago.
No, I don't
Yeah.
care, 7:30, I'll be home by 8:30, that's all.
So I'm just
I
trying
appreciate it.
to get all the
My
questions.
youngest son is leaving for college tomorrow morning, so
Okay, you gotta go.
spend a little time with him tonight. Give him dad's best advice, which he doesn't need, but since he's the last one, I feel.
And he's gonna listen now?
He is, he's gonna be able to.
What college?
Pardon. It's not too far, 2 hours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jeff.
All right, anytime, reach out. The one thing that I would request, and I say this to all boards and commissions, is go through the chair. So I don't get the same question from 6 people. If you have any questions, you can let Brendan know, or you can let Kate know, and depending on the type of question, you can approach. All right, thanks, folks. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for your service.
Safe travels. See you later. Thank you, Jeff.
That's it.
All right.
Okay. We want to move forward with some comments from Kevin Delaney.
We can only go back to
We
the,
can go back. Unless he's-
haven't been on for a while.
Please, give us their information.
Did we wait?
All right, Kevin, you're up.
Good evening. Sorry for the technical difficulties earlier, but I just wanted to take a few minutes, and it's kind of interesting that it came right after Jeff's conversation, just to really reiterate the timing around bonding. There are certain rules to go out to bond. Given the magnitude of where the project sits today, bonding really is the primary alternative, certainly if you could get a grant or funding from somewhere else. But from a bonding standpoint, you end up with a legal document. And so it's important, number one, that whatever you're going to look for in the project is included in the bond ordinance. We can't spend money, bond money, on something that we didn't include in the ordinance. So you want to make sure the project is vetted. We've had projects where we tried to do as much as we could, but then ultimately had to come back for a second ordinance. And that ends up costing more money, delays the project, takes more time. Second thing is timing. So the bonding process, really high level. First, the council has to authorize the town manager to work with bond counsel to draft an ordinance. That ordinance then comes back at a subsequent meeting to be reviewed at a public hearing. So the public has the right to voice an opinion. Then the council has to vote to move it forward. And then at another meeting, the Board of Finance has to move it forward. And in this case, because it would be likely over $5 million by charter, it would have a required referendum. Given that timing, to hit the April budget meeting, you would realistically have to have a buttoned up project plan where you're confident all the pieces, whether that includes purchasing property, if it includes remediating property. Unfortunately, there's a number of contaminated sites in town. Hopefully this isn't one of them, but I think you want to make sure that there is something in there that allows for contamination and remediation if it arises. Construction, engineering, advertising, legal, as well as any of the finished touches. You've got the parking lot, you've got all the electrical, the plumbing. So we want to make sure, and the wording is general, as general as we can make it. But if there's anything unique, for example, if you want the bonding to cover equipment that you might put in, gym equipment, basketball equipment, lane things and others for the swimming pools, any of those items, we need to make sure that we include all of those in the bond ordinance. I just want to emphasize that what we're effectively doing with the bond ordinance is we're going to the street and saying, we would like you to loan the town of Berlin X dollars. In exchange for that, here's what we intend to do with it. We have to follow that because we are committing to spend the money the way we've said we would spend it. Given all of that, you likely have to be in a good spot by late December or at least early January, ready to move forward with the council, given that it's at least a 4-meeting process to move forward. And that kind of assumes that the council and Board of Finance would move forward. There's nothing that prevents the council or Board of Finance from tabling a bond ordinance for a meeting if they have questions, if there's follow-up, if they have concerns. So you have a fairly tight window. And as I say, it's unfortunate. I'm following Jeff's because he mentioned about making sure you have the project, you've adopted it, and obviously that is critical. But you also want to be cognizant of when that needs to be available. And the last piece, and then I'll turn it over to Kate, is the timing there is also critical because Kate needs that bond ordinance to be able to put onto the ballot so people know what they're voting for at the time we start absentee voting. And that's part of Kate's that I'll go into, and then I'll turn it over to Kate so I don't mess anything else up.
So basically, if we make a mistake on this, it could be very costly by trying to rush this.
If there's a part of the project that after going to bond ordinance, you decide you want to change, then we have to go back through the process. I'll use the high school renovation as an example. So the high school project went to referendum and failed the first time. It was scaled back and went to referendum a second time and passed. but it was at a lower level. Subsequent to that, the town was able to secure state funding for additional work. The state typically, for large projects like that, they're going to require that the town have a bond ordinance in place for the full cost of the project. We didn't borrow close to the full cost of the high school project, but the state wants to know that if necessary, the town can finish the project. And so at that time, we did not have the charter requirement of 5 million and over to go to referendum. So the council was able to adopt the revision and move forward with the higher price tag. You would then have to go back through the process if you're adding in more, 5 million or more, and go back out to referendum for more money if there's a piece that you want to change, add in, or something like that. So you want to make sure that pieces that you may want to include, even items, and I go just because of recent experiences, the Boulevard and many other places, you can, even after you're deep into a project, come across contamination. And unfortunately, Berlin has several sites like that. That's just one that comes to mind for me that I think we want written. It doesn't mean we have to spend a penny on it. It just means that we want it written into the bond ordinance. If we encounter it, we can spend bond money to remediate, remove soil, bring in clean soil. Mike could probably speak a lot better as to all the steps we might take in that instance. But that's just one example that comes to mind. Equipment is another. But I think as you go through, you really want to think about the project and make sure as we go forward with the bond ordinance, we're asking for all the things that we know and believe we may need. And then if we don't use it, that's perfectly fine. I mean, there's always the language we're going to ask for architecture fees and legal fees and things like that. I fully expect that the architecture fees will be covered under the grant. I mean, the grant that we have is $750,000. And I was just looking while Jeff was talking. To date, we have spent $176,000. So with $574,000 left, my hope would be that any future architectural work or even legal work around the bonding and the like would be included, but we still include it because something else can come up. We've had projects in town where Army Corps of Engineers, Historic Society, others have challenged what we're doing, and we've been in a drawn out process. You just don't know what you're going to encounter. I happened to grow up in Niantic, and I remember a project going on, and then they unearthed some bones that they actually thought were from Native American, and it delayed a construction project for over 2 years. So you just don't know what you're going to encounter. And I just want to make sure that we include it. Again, the example, the most recent example, we did the Scalise turf and we made it the turf project. When we wanted to do additional work to fix the bleachers and kind of wrap them in chain link, Jen will remember, I unfortunately got to deliver the news that that's not in the ordinance. You can't spend bond money. We used surplus money, but we couldn't. And that was, fencing around seating right on the side of a turf field. But because we said this is a turf replacement project, we had to spend the money on turf replacement and something similar associated with the turf. I always get to be the wet blanket in these meetings, I guess. Everybody's so quiet when I'm done. Are there any other questions or?
With the timeline that was presented, if the council should decide that it wants to move towards, or wants us, or we decide we're going to work towards the April date, we really need to have most things tied up 99.9% by the end of this calendar year, based on this schedule. Is that fair?
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions for Kevin? Very good.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Now, the timeline is simply for an idea so that you understand. the
Sure,
line.
exactly.
All right, but that's all it is. It can be moved to a November election, it can be moved to whatever you want to do. But it's simply so that you have an idea of how long it takes to get the bond.
Okay. Move on to Mr. Mike Aher. You're up.
Okay, can everyone hear me clearly?
Yeah.
All right, that's good. And just on the referendum timeline, when the PBC, and this kind of relates to the PBC timeline before this committee was even a thought, there was discussion about going for this November referendum. And once Kate and Kevin educated me, it was like there was no way we could make it because you really have to have all your ducks in a row 2 months plus before the date of the referendum. So that was a little eye opener for us. But the one word for the PBC timeline was disrupted, completely disrupted. The PBC wanted to go to a full public outreach in March and April of this year when COVID hit. So there was a 2-month hiatus. Once that we realized there was no in-person, outreach possible, PBC basically put, and QA&M has been great as far as being very accommodating. So they said, listen, we'll just take a 2-month hiatus. They set the website up. They did a few little things, but they really didn't go full bore. So I think, and I don't like speaking for the PBC, but just being in the meetings, I think the PBC is waiting to see what comes out of this committee as far as, and the referendum really is the goal. I think whichever referendum this committee is shooting for, I think the PBC would discuss that. But I think really the town council is going to be, is directing the PBC. So if the town council says, hey, go for the November referendum or go for the April referendum of next year, I think the PBC would just, that's the direction everyone wants to go. So it's been basically the original timeline is out the window. So we're waiting to hear what this committee comes up with.
Mike, has Tom Arcuri been made aware of this advisory committee?
I believe he has, because I think he was at one meeting when it was discussed. But we're having a meeting next week, next Thursday, PBC. So, and I was told to report on this committee's meeting, which I'm attending now. So Tom, I think he's aware of it, but I'll make sure he is.
Because at some point, I think we may, as a committee, Brendan, may want to bring him in and, be able to talk with him, as Cascade points out, kind of liaison with him. Although I know PBC, you guys pay the bills, so.
Yeah, well, we can discuss that next week, and I don't see why they would have a problem with it, but then again, they'd have to vote on it. Or at least just say, yes, go ahead and tell Tom. But Tom's really, this is part of his outreach. So I would see it being in his original scope of services, but that's just me. That's my opinion, but we'll discuss it next week.
Yeah, that was one of my questions, Mike. Is he fulfilled his contract requirements for what he was asked to do? Or is there still room to proceed with him, or does it have to be another agenda item with the PBC, another proposal with a quote?
Mike, you muted yourself.
Sorry about that. I think this falls under outreach, because they'll be discussing with you the conceptual plans, the cost estimate, all that stuff. But then again, so I don't think there's an extra town council meeting, because the proposal actually takes us all the way to final design. So there's a lot of flexibility in QA&M scope that's already been approved.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I think you're good. I don't think there's going to have to be any more town council actions to have him attend your meeting or even, provide input.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mike? this point? No? Okay, Mike.
Okay,
You're all
have a
good.
nice night, guys. Take care.
Okay, no, Donnie, you want to maybe jump back a little bit to talk about the review of tax? Or the fair item? Or is Jen?
Jen,
Jen?
you have the Berlin, you want to talk about the Berlin Fair?
I mean, yeah, Don, I guess, reached out to Lions and they were secure at the table at no charge. So I was tasked with trying to fill that booth for the weekend. So I just, like I said, that's all I've done is tried to fill it as much as I was able to. Right now, we have staff available Friday, 10:30 to 4, Saturday, 10 to 2, 10 to 12, and Sunday, 10 to 12. And then QA and M staff have picked up some of the other slots, but we still do have a lot of staff available. We also have a few 4-hour time blocks where it's only QA and M staff, so I don't know. That would be up to you guys if you feel comfortable with them just running the 10 at that point. I think you also have to decide if you're going to have them show the conceptual plan.
Yes, David.
Yeah, I do. I think it's way too early to do this public outreach. First of all, the committee hasn't voted to do it. Okay. I don't know who you're outreaching. Are you outreaching children? Are you outreaching seniors? Are you outreaching people from other towns at the fair? Do we have a list of questions that we want to ask them? These are all things that this committee has to decide. How are we going to do outreach? I think it's way too early and premature to do this. So I'm opposed to setting up anything at the Berlin Fair to do any kind of outreach. I think we all have seen this evening. I think we've all learned, including me. There's a lot of rules on how we do things, and it's complex, and we have a lot of work to do. And I think it's way too early to do this. So I'm opposed to having anything at the fair with respect to outreach. I don't know what we're going to be telling them or asking them.
That would be my same concern. We don't have answers. We have minimal amount of answers. We've put this out 3 times now. I've been to 2 of the presentations at the high school. It's been on social media, it's been in the paper. People have a rough idea what this thing looks like, but people are asking me questions. They're asking me for numbers. How much is this going to cost? What fee, what's it going to cost for how's it going to affect my taxes? How's it going to, am I going to have to pay to go to this? How's this all going to work? And all I can say is, I don't know. So I think we're getting way ahead of ourselves. Just continue having an architect out there putting out his vision of what we want in Berlin. I think that's just not, it's not going to be productive at this point. It's just, I just don't see it being productive. I think it would be more counterproductive than anything, because what it's going to do is end up with people more confused with less information. And I think that's not a good place to be right now. We need to get this done, and people are going to have a lot of questions that we can't answer. That's my opinion on it.
Reach a certain point that the architect already has a proposal out there, or conceptual design, and has numbers in there that people see. And we're not quite there yet, So if we put people in that position, you can stand here with them and answer these questions. We're all going to defer to the architect who designed a nice project, and that's what he would like to build. And we're not really even there yet.
Right, and there's just his staff, they may not know the answers either.
Yeah.
So are we done with public outreach then, as a town? We're not going to share this conceptual design. And I agree, we have to be very specific. It's a conceptual design. I've also talked to people, and people being people, oh, we haven't heard about this, we haven't seen it, that type of thing. Being at the Berlin Fair is a great opportunity for people to see the conceptual design. And again, just a thought is, yes, people are going to ask those questions. And I would definitely have someone there taking down those questions so that we make sure as a committee we're able to answer them before we think we're done. Just like any meeting that we might hold for the town people. You were at the first or June meetings, very few people came out. School ended, everybody split. Not a lot of advertising for those meetings. The senior meeting, more advertising was done, more people showed up. I'm hopeful that more people will show up, again, to get their thoughts about what we need or what we don't want. Like, do we really need, just say, a third pool that the architect put in that was not an iron statement of need at all? So those things, we need feedback from people. And I don't think the town has gotten enough feedback from the townspeople. And the only way I believe you can get it is to show them what you have conceptually and then ask them to come back. We don't want a gym. We got enough gyms. Let's hear that. We haven't heard it thus far, but there's probably those comments out there. This is good. I'd like to hear those things. So I'm all for more public outreach, and I think that is part of our job, and I'd like to schedule things ASAP.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think that we need to have as many people aware of this as possible. And by going to the fair or to PTOs or mothers clubs, whatever organization, there are so many people that would love this project, but they don't know anything about it. And I think that's what we have to do. We have to make people aware before we get to the referendum. When we have the meeting, the forum at the senior center, there was a lot of people there. There was almost 100 people there, and they were very, very supportive. So I think that when people see what we're doing, they're going to be supportive. But we can't just throw it to referendum and hope that people are going to know what we're doing.
It's not a matter of just throwing it to referendum. That's not the case. But we also don't want to jump out there too early when we just can't answer basic questions, because I heard a lot of people ask questions at the senior center. I listened to it on Zoom, and they asked a lot of questions that couldn't be answered. How much is it going to raise my taxes? Why do we need a building this big? There's a lot of questions out there being asked. We don't have enough basic answers yet to even develop a plan. We don't know how much this is going to have an impact on taxes. We don't even know how much it's going to cost. So what are we going to tell people? We're going to show them a picture? Then we don't need anybody to staff it. Put up a picture and this is it.
So is the thing to do for this conceptual design, and Brendan, you know better about this, right? So there are numbers out there as to what the architect, who I believe hired an independent firm, but I'm not sure how independent. Okay, so there's a number out there, 35.7 million for the current conceptual design. That's all it is. And that doesn't include operations, right? So that's to build the facility. Do we have, are we supposed to get or should we get a cost estimate on this current design? I'm not sure you have enough to actually do that, but is that what we should do? Because then as we go forward, we're going, let's eliminate this or add this or whatever and get costs as we go. And then is your thought process on sharing that with the public is going back to the public and telling them this month, we're focused on this. This was the baseline. I'm using the 35.7, call it 36 million, but maybe the baseline is something else. To your, maybe that's what we need to do. But how do you, I've been to the meetings, you've been to meetings, you listened to Zoom. There's been a lot of good comments made by the public that's been there. I think there's a lot more comments that we can learn from. And we could maybe go down dual paths, still do public outreach while we maybe get a baseline estimate of this.
I don't know if we really should be worried about the whole cost and question stuff when we can use this tool to be more of the outreach part, which is asking people what would you like to see. We all agree we're not there, and we don't have the answer. How much is this cost? How much? What is it going to look like? We can still be in the mind of gathering information from what the town people want to see here. And if we treat it like that and say, listen, we don't have numbers for you, we don't know where that is. We're in that process. We can share with them the schedule that we're making as far as our meetings, different concerns. There's plenty of meetings that can be had here. This is what we're trying to put together. We need your help to find out exactly what you want. If we treat it that way, then obviously you're going to have people ask questions how much you don't want. So counting on you to give us the input as to what you want to see there. That's when we're going to find out that number. Maybe that's the best way to go about this, because I sort of agree with the outreach thing. Yeah, we do have good numbers that showed up in the meetings, but you're still going to have several batches of people are going to say, I don't know, I haven't seen this. What's going on? We're doing center. I don't know what's doing that. So just to educate them as to what we're looking at doing, asking the questions, do you want, what do you want to see? Maybe there's a small questionnaire. What would you like to see in the community center? Write your information and then give us the demographic you are between the ages of so and so, so and so, so and so. And that's all we do, and make it as simple as that.
That's what we wrote on the questionnaire.
That would make sense to me to have a questionnaire type thing, or even if you set up a web page and go put your opinion on the web page, pass out a web address, fill out your name, address, and what do you think, what do you want to see, what are your concerns, something as simple as that. I mean, everybody's got a phone and a computer nowadays, it's not complicated.
Get a better idea of the demographics of who wants to use what program, yeah.
If we're gonna be, I mean, I don't want to get into this thing where we're presenting like, this is what you people are gonna get.
We don't have a project.
And
right.
We shall do that. That's what I don't want
And
to
if,
see.
and if you're gonna go the outreach that way, the way Mike explained it, are you gonna pay QA and their staff to be there?
That was gonna be my next point.
Why do we need them?
Exactly.
If you're not promoting what they did and you're just collecting issues, but that being said, cross QA and M staff off of this list and you have a lot more space to
That,
be able to make it move well.
But we would need minimum staffing at that. One person.
and that's what I'm going to get to.
And with an email address, you could actually not even staff it.
Right.
It's just there. Put cards out, take the card with a brief description on it. Please fill out your name, address, and mail your opinions to something like that would probably work decent. I honestly, with QA and M, their presentations, I'm a little nervous having them because these guys are salesmen. And they were pitching it, the first meeting, they were pitching it like it was a done deal. And people were getting I talked to people after the meeting that said, we didn't even know about this. You guys are building this giant building. And I said, whoa, this is just the very beginning. But they weren't pitching it that way. These guys had it sold like it was going to be this going up. And I'd rather, I'm cool with that as long as it's going to be a situation where people can voice their opinions, but this is the rough draft. This is the early design. What do you want to see in this? What are your concerns over this? 70,000 square feet, just a basic, 70,000 square feet, basic, what the amenities would be, potential cost between 35 and $40 million, because it did say it was up to a 20% spread in that number he found.
4%.
Well, he later in the meeting went from 4 to 10, then he went to 20.
Well, whatever it is, right? So
So I mean, if a questionnaire is what you're looking to do, and just a table up there with a box with a slip, basically, then that's, it's in 2 weeks, so you guys have to decide tonight on the questionnaire, questions being asked, and how you do it.
the town went through back 20 years ago, and then 30 years ago, there were questionnaires sent out to the public for various things. Maybe we could take a look at that, draft it up. Now, how we come to an agreement on what should be on the questionnaire, so it's in time for the Berlin Fair. But if you want to do it, maybe it's not in time for the Berlin Fair.
Yeah, because it would have to be decided tonight.
I guess, it depends when our next meeting is. We could, perhaps meet before. If you want to do a questionnaire, we do that.
We think that
I'm gonna go back to my original point. I know, Barbara, I heard you say, well, we want to tell the people what we want. You said, we don't know what we want because we haven't voted on anything yet. We can't tell the public anything because we haven't even voted. I think it's premature to rush this outreach. I don't even know if the Berlin Fair is the right vehicle for an outreach. I don't know. And we're rushing this thing through. We're trying to say, oh, we're gonna make questions tonight. It's too rushed. We don't know what questions to ask. We maybe need to go look at some of the other facilities. Would you like this? Would you like that? I just think it's way too early and we're rushing it at the fair. I don't think we should do it. I think we should do it. I like. to
Do we
make it-
do any public outreach? In your
Absolutely,
opinion?
yes, at
And
some
when
point.
do we do that?
I don't
now?
know yet. I
Oh,
think
you
that
don't
this committee will decide when we want to do outreach, when we want to
Right,
learn
I'm-
from the public. I don't think we're, I know we're not done
How do we
outreach.
know what the public wants in order for us to determine what we are gonna vote on? I mean, I would hope that we're gonna listen to the public, understand what, the public wants, and that we would support that based on the studies that we have with other towns and things like that, right?
And I think
So
there's
how do you know
multiple,
that if you don't do it?
we're gonna need, well, we're gonna have to decide what type of outreach we want to do. It can't just be one fair stuff.
And I'm not-
No,
Well,
pushing
I
it,
agree, but this committee is gonna have to decide, hey, what, are we gonna like do a mailer to every taxpayer in Berlin with a questionnaire? Are we gonna do the fair? Are we gonna do it at the senior center? Are we gonna invite them to Park and Rec? I don't know what outreach we're gonna do or how we're gonna do it. We definitely have to do it. But it's a joke to rush this thing through in 2 weeks and hurry up tonight, make a few questions that are really, we don't even know, irrelevant. We may have 20 questions, we're gonna put 5 maybe tonight. It's too rushed, it's not done properly.
I'm not,
No.
I'm not trying to push
No,
anything
no,
on
no,
you.
no.
I'm really trying to
That's right.
put on the factual information. on If you're gonna do it, this is what needs to be
So
done.
so that's my position.
You're here
It's like,
helping us.
yeah, I don't want to waste time and effort unless it's done right. And I just think like, this is our first meeting, and we gotta hurry up, let's figure out the fair. I think it's too fast. And I don't think we're ready for it. I don't think we're prepared. And that being said, I'm gonna make a motion.
Right, I think, let me just say one thing though, what I'm envisioning and what you guys turned that into very quickly with making a list of questions is 2 different things. All I was talking about was your name, your address, and your opinion, what you'd like to see. That's one question. You don't need a list of questions. You know what I'm saying,
Oh, like
Dave?
have that like a free form.
Let them just write
I
down,
want a pool, I want.
or I think this whole idea sucks. Give them an opportunity to say what they want to say.
So what you're gonna, you have to tell them, listen, we're thinking about a $35 million community center. What do you think
35 to
about?
$40 million.
You know, okay, well, it's like, we're rushing this whole thing tonight, really, for the fair. It's a rush job, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
It's a rush job and I don't agree. I'm sorry, I know. It's like, really, like, we just met for the first time. And we're already trying to create now, if the fair was 2 months away, we had time.
yeah, even the end of September.
Yeah, and we had time to figure out a proper questionnaire. But we're gonna be running around with our heads cut off. We're not gonna figure this out tonight and do a good job on what that questions to ask. It's never gonna happen. You know, it's not gonna happen.
I think
When
just,
do you think we should push for our first public outreach, just so that we can build that into our timeline? If it's not the Berlin Fair, like when do we expect that we would want to go out to the public? And to be fair, I've recommended this to the mayor too. I believe that the town should put out something saying, look, we established, and maybe it's tomorrow. The mayor has an article he puts out, and he says, we established a supervisory committee. This is what their task is. This is what they're gonna do. They want to reach out. That's another way to reach out to the public. We need your opinions. We need this. Call these subcommittee members and give them your opinions, on things. And if you want to see the conceptual plan, the video is available on the website. We need, comments on it, constructive comments.
I don't even know why we gotta get locked into one particular design either. I mean, why can't, how hard would it be to have, this is A, this is B, and this is C? Give the people a little bit of options here. Maybe the 70,000 square foot building, this is what it's gonna cost, some the operating cost. This is the scale down to like what Newtown has, I think it's 46 or 43,000 square feet. And this is the operating cost for that. And then maybe a third option, okay, we talked about the Y option.
Absolutely.
And here's the Y option, here's the benefits in the of each one. But that can't happen. We're trying to
Right, we're not
rush.
there yet.
We're
Right.
trying to rush a $40 million project and get it done by next April, when we've been waiting for 50 years. We can't make a mistake on this. I want to see something get built. But I don't want to see something get rushed through and the people go, now we don't want that. Because I don't want to waste my time. I don't think any of you guys will either.
No,
Let's do this one thing.
right, that's what, the police station had the same question. Who's the action?
The police station.
We're gonna have to go through the statement, we need to know the variables are, and then we're gonna have to meet with our architect and, you know, what other options do we have? Scale the building down, A, B, and C, and then we can put those forward. I mean, that's a good point.
I think the Newington, I mean, the Newtown building, I desperately want to see that. Because it's a smaller version of what we're looking at and see what they're running into. I mean, they're also a bigger town than us. They got 29,000 people. We got 20,000. They're also a richer town than us. Their per capita income is almost $25,000 more a household. So there's comparisons there that I think we can work with. And then we still have the Y option floating around out there. Maybe partnering with the Y to get everybody what they want is going to be the best option for the town. But let's not rush to beat a deadline.
Well, we need to set a timeline, I would suggest.
Yeah.
Like, what is our timeline, meeting schedule? And,
Well, wait, we gotta finish this Berlin Fair thing and outreach. We're not done with this. Right?
is it just the Berlin Fair you want to talk
Oh,
about?
that's what we're talking about. Now we're going.
Yeah, we got to
I mean, I
finish
would
this
like
up.
to give it to Alliance and let them know. if
Yeah,
they're
right.
not.
So the whole thing is, as we talk about this outreach, we may want a very comprehensive, and we gotta talk about types of outreach. Now, what, we have grant money, we only burned 176, so we got, over $500,000 left. We may decide we want to spend 10 grand, create a mailer, professional mailer that goes to every household with the correct questions that we deem necessary. Okay, that's a comprehensive outreach. And when we get that back, we'll know a whole bunch of stuff versus somebody discussing it.
And there's the
I
same
agree.
thing. We can
I
put an
agree.
email address on that, and email your
I
opinion.
agree with that. I think though, what we have a problem because we can't spend money. But we
we
maybe
can
have
get
to
that
recommend
taken
to
care
the
of.
council to.
But see, with respect to outreach, we're rushing this little Berlin Fair thing, and we don't even know if it's the proper outreach that we got. We should really be making a list of what outreach options are available. We should make a list. We don't even know. We could make a list tonight, and we probably still fall short of what outreach methods do we want to use. We don't even know.
Right, and I think, Mike Ahern's on the line, Public Building Commission worked on this with Tom Arcari. Now, I know we're supposed to work with the building commission because they control the architect and all that kind of stuff, right? So, but they had a whole plan of public outreach.
Okay, well, I
So,
like you.
and that's, and the Berlin Fair, just FYI, when it was brought up at one of the June meetings. A citizen suggested it and said that'd be perfect. And actually, I think it is.
Well, it's up to this committee to decide. whether
Maybe
to
it's
do
No,
it.
I agree. I'm just telling you where it came. It came from a citizen. So in any event, when we talked to the, Mark, I'm not sure you were, I think you were there, but we talked with Tom Arcari after that. We talked about the Berlin Fair. That would be great. That's why I contacted him. So, and Tom Arcari, the architect, thought that was a great plan, again, to get the conceptual design out there to people so they could see it.
Well, certainly, he's the architect. He wants it out there,
Yeah.
definitely.
Of course it was, and I do too.
I think it's, again, I think it's way too early. We're not organized enough. We don't know all the outreach methods that we want to use. So I'm going to make a motion that we do not do outreach to Berlin Fair this year.
I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a vote.
Might as well.
Might as well.
Are you making me work for my money?
So any further discussion? Anybody else have any final thoughts on it?
Anyone else have any other questions, follow on that?
I want to do this right. And I want to have people having good information going into this. I don't want to be sitting here this week trying to make a decision that we have to have done next. That just doesn't seem the way to handle $40 million.
Okay.
The motion is not to,
Have outreach at Berlin Fair.
not to. I disagree. I vote no.
Well, I go along with the committee if they feel this is not the right time to do it. But I do think we need outreach and soon.
How do you want to vote?
It is an awkward motion, usually it's in a positive or negative, so you go, no, you don't agree with the motion. Then, you agree with the motion?
Yes.
Brendan, Dave,
Yes, I agree.
Mike,
I don't agree.
you have a 3-3 vote, the motion fails.
So why don't we come up? Well, we want to set some dates for our next meeting. Maybe we want to discuss about.
Well, if
So the motion fails, do we now try and complete this schedule?
No, we're not.
Motion failed.
The motion failed.
The motion was not to do the Berlin Fair. Right? You understand that?
So that means that. Oh, we don't have a motion.
You really don't have any.
We don't have a motion to do it either. We don't have a motion to do it either. No one's
Yes,
says we're doing it.
it's dead.
It's dead.
Is that correct? Steph? See, that's the problem with having 6 people, right? Unfortunately, we're gonna get to the positions.
We don't have a tiebreaker.
Just for the 6 people thing, we have a board of finance of 6 people and they get stuff done because people have to compromise. 3, the board of finance now for 4 years that has 6 people on it. And they get stuff voted through. So that's sort of the concept behind it is making you guys go together. People can take on both sides.
I think the one thing we can do, because I mean, I would really get into, okay, how we need to do this out and what the schedule will be. You know, I'm the same thought process. I don't want to rush it. It's a huge price. We don't want to. But what are we going to do to make sure that we get as much as we can from the public and also let them know what, you know, what is going on at the same time. The mailers is a great idea.
I think that's a good one right there. You can literally hit every town, you can hit every home in Berlin.
And I think that as long as we know, you know, there's that, we can always do, you know, outreach in the paper, we can always do the website thing where we do, you know, comments.
What's your opinion?
That's a great thing to do too. You know, you can create these things in the radio where you can just call into a phone line. If you give your opinion, something like that, you know, choose to do that. I'm not saying that's great. But, you know, just for me, it's all about, the thing that always bothers me the most about when we do things in town, hear people say, I had no idea this was going on. I didn't know what was going on. Even though
It kills me when they say that.
we all
about
feel
Berlin.
like that we do as much as we can. I feel like, well, it's here, it's there, it's there. And I just think that you know, for me, when you're at the fair is very much one of those things where you're going to get a good time, you know, you walk around, you see friends, do that kind of thing. You get them information about this is going on. It doesn't mean that we have to rush questions. We have to come up with a list of this, what do you want to see? Or, you know, maybe just to let them know this is what's coming. We value your opinion, look through a mailer, go to this website, that kind of stuff. You know, obviously when you have the website, stuff, that's what you say. But just something where you're getting to as many eyes as possible. And Berlin Fair, obviously, even though there are a lot of towns, is a place where it has a lot of people are going to see this. And maybe there's a way to kind of figure out, you know, the meet in the middle would be like, all right, maybe we don't put a questionnaire together, but maybe we can just have a way of people sticking it in the paper about it. And, yeah, we'll get 10 or 15, like, they'll do this stuff, but we'll probably get some feedback. At the very least, you'll have eyes on it. You know, people understanding we're looking to help the project. It's gonna take a while, or that'll take a while, but we have a process that we're putting together to make sure that we're doing our due diligence for everything.
I think for just raw input, that's not the worst thing in the world, and I would say it's on staff. And it's just simple picture, a couple pictures of what it is. This is a rough draft proposal with basic information, 70,000 square feet, 35 to $40 million. Basic on amenities, not room by room details, just basic. And voice your opinion with cards you can fill out and just drop in the box.
Yeah, let me see, we had a front page article in the Berlin Citizen about community center in Senior Center, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, the Berlin Citizen, right, front page, people know that we're talking about this.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is this is a half-assed attempt at outreach. That's what it is. We're rushing it. We don't have the right questions. It really is a
I
Mickey
don't think
Mouse.
we need any questions.
But what do we're gonna tell them what we want to do. We don't even know what we want to do.
Well,
yet.
that's-
This group
that's-
doesn't even know what we want to do.
Yeah,
And
that's
we're
the
telling them
problem I
what we
have.
want to
We
do.
don't
We
really
don't even
have
know
the
what the heck we want to do.
Anybody have an
I'm sorry,
like
but
a survey or something like that?
I know Google Forms does surveys. I don't do one, but I know the school uses.
But Tim saying it's not man, you have a place where people can go. I've never used it.
Yeah, I haven't
Can I
either.
just say, would it be, certainly council would be, I think, willing to do this, I got two other council members here too, we have $500,000, right? It might be a smart thing to, I think, Jen, you just said it, like, if there's a marketing, you know, we have some, you can hire somebody just for a very nominal fee, I'm sure help us a little bit with marketing and to design maybe what we want, and I mean, if you guys you can't take on this whole thing yourself, you're volunteer, I mean, it's brutal, right? It's a lot of stuff to do. But if you spend a little, that's what that money's for. Council would happily allocate it to get something, you know, kind of professionally done, maybe some suggestions from a marketing firm or a consultant, just for a, you know, a small contract fee or whatever, you know, I don't know what the town, you know, the town really doesn't really do that. I mean, we market our town, but, well, we do actually perception marketing, so.
That might be a guy to talk to.
That's what I'm kind of thinking. We market our town for economic development. Why don't we market our people for this and get some nice professional things designed? You guys don't have to kill yourself trying to figure out what to do. You know, and you know, they'll present it to you. You're gonna decide, hey, this looks good, you know, and work with them.
Yeah, I think
You
even,
know, I'm sorry, just I didn't mean to just throw that.
no, I think even like you guys said, you don't want to come up with questions tonight. If you want to do the room print, want to do it how you're saying, there's still logistics involved. Okay, we're gonna do a table, we're gonna do a box, we're gonna do a piece of paper. What's being written on that piece of paper? What pictures are we showcasing? And who's dropping off that box in the morning and picking it up at the end of the fair and then making sure our booth is set up the next day.
And we don't have a lot of.
So there's still logistics like that that need to be figured out on top of just, I know you're trying to simplify it, but even
Yeah,
by simplifying it, you still have logistics.
Honestly, at this point, I think we're probably better off. There's so many other ways we can market it.
And if you want to do a questionnaire, just to suggest, I know in the past we've used UConn. They're a lot, they can go out. I would suggest that maybe that's something to put on our agenda, have them come in for our next meeting, along with Tom Arcari, the architect, and let's go through, you know, public outreach. Get that straightened out. That's my suggestion.
Yeah, man.
I like that idea. It's a good idea. Future agenda for the next meeting. Good time of carrying, right? Whatever this thing is, you have to fix.
So
Maybe we can look.
Tom
at
can get in
some of
touch
these,
with UConn, or, you know, some, I believe they still do it,
Survey.
but they've been used several times in the past, or if there's someone, you know, that you guys know.
Yeah.
But you want it professionally done. I don't think it's as simple as, you know, what do you want? And I agree with you. I would never put out, it's 35 to 40 million, 70,000, because we don't really know. What we do know is we've got a conceptual design that maybe somehow we could share, point people to look at, which I will tell you though, because it's been on Facebook and there's a lot of great comments and it goes right to QA&M. I've looked at all the comments. The town put it on Facebook. I will tell you though, the senior population, I'm going to include Barbara. Barbara's email doesn't work. She doesn't get on Facebook, and she's a big proponent. So somehow we have to reach out differently to the senior population, to those that don't go on and don't have a computer.
That's where
blah, blah,
mail
blah.
comes in.
So that's why you have professionals come in and they tell you. So you'll set that up. Okay?
Also, a lot of times the,
So you have to.
planning and zoning, because they do their conservation plan every 10 years, they have put out questionnaires also.
Yeah.
I think they did it, so I
And
think
there's one
that,
coming up.
yep, they're right in the midst of starting with a whole setup, so that might be a useful source also.
Right, whoever they're using or whatever. I don't know their timeline on their questionnaire versus what we want to do, but I think, and at least we can let them know the information's out there too, right? And it goes to every household, blah, blah, blah. When I said, you said, I thought I was running, but the town has to get in contact with these firms for us.
So not to be a dead horse tonight, because it's 8:15.
Yep.
I need to get back to the Lions. And I need to tell QA&M that are or aren't doing the run of this.
I think we should probably just fill it here. So,
The calendar, we've got about 17 weeks holidays. How often do you want?
And also just about the calendar that was given out, I am the staff liaison and I can't do that because Donna didn't know that when she put together the.
These were
anticipated
recommended
dates.
dates, right?
I also just want to throw this out here, just representing the rest of the staff that you might have to bring into these meetings, Kevin Delaney's out, so like Debbie, Tina. If there's a possibility to do some day meetings, if you guys can do via Zoom, I know it might make it easier for when staff does need to report to the meeting, but I understand that we can't always do day meetings, but if there's times that we can do, it would make it easier for when you want to bring staff in.
How peaceful is the Thursdays, like something that makes a difference at all?
Not all staff work till 7, but like I said, I can't do Wednesdays, I can do Mondays, I can do Thursdays. Thursdays, you just have some conflicts with PVC, with shipping out, but Parks and Rec is on Thursday. Like I said, I just Wednesdays are impossible.
Tuesdays probably good for us, but.
Brendan,
Right,
I-
so
I-
this
You
schedule,
have house on Tuesday, right? You have house on Tuesday.
Yes.
I think our schedule runs right around yours.
You guys are every other, right? Or are you the same as council?
We're pretty much every Tuesday. We're here the same time as council.
Yeah. Monday, Commission on Aging has one meeting in September, one meeting in November, one in January. Economic Development is on Mondays, right? Is that once a month or twice a month? So
I'd suggest we
Mondays
meet,
would work.
I'd suggest we meet once a month to get started. That's what I'd suggest.
and
Just to get started. And I don't think we should set all the dates right now. We may start, we may come to our first meeting and then say, hey, next month we're gonna meet twice. There's a lot going on. I just think that, and I know there's a lot to do now, but there's a lot of work we have to do and we can't rush this. And so I'd be an advocate of once a month to get started.
so once a month though, should the council want to take this step sometime in January, that means, you got 4 meetings.
Well, I think that.
You can only have 3 more.
I think
Well,
it's
see,
actually.
that's what I'm hearing. So it's another, I'm just gonna say, delay. I would like to have more meetings, especially in the beginning, to get going. Like this meeting, I wish was in August, so that we got all this put to bed and we're moving forward. But I'm okay with meeting. I'll meet twice a month. And go visit places and start doing some due diligence to bring back. And, I'm hopeful that we all can do that. But I know there's gonna be some limitations. People are gonna be away or whatever. But, I think we need to push ourselves to the best of our ability and do it right. I totally agree. We won't be done until we're done, but we need to push toward the deadline. And right now, what I'm hearing from you guys, there is no deadline. And, you know, now I hear once a month a meeting. We're never gonna get done. So I'd like to meet at least every other week. We can change these dates. The dates I put down, I looked at your meeting schedules, our commission meetings, and these seem to fit. Didn't know about Jen on Wednesday nights, but, you know, there's a couple Wednesday nights, 3 of them right now. But in any event, there is a lot to get done. So I don't think once a month is doable. And and again, if you want to delay and you have a date in mind, let's say it.
You know, Donna, I don't have anything, you know, and I don't want to delay, but I want to do the process properly and make sure we go through this. And I don't want to rush anything because we have a responsibility to the council and to the taxpayers to do this right. And if it's February, it's February. If it's November, it's November. If it's 2023, it's 2023. When we're done with all our work, we'll be ready, but not before that. We've got to do our job right. I'm not trying to delay, but I don't have a date picked out yet because I actually don't even know how long it's going to take us to get all this done. There's a lot of work that we have to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And so,
I think it's ridiculous to have a set date already.
yeah.
I don't have a set date.
Well, we've just heard it's gotta be January.
No. What they said is if the council, and it's the council's decision. If the council decides to take it to referendum, these are the dates they work backwards. And then we have to work backwards. I'm not saying that. And if it's not April, it's not April. But, you know, even in business, you set an end date and you work backwards to figure out how you're going to get there. So it's been discussed in the forums. The cost, the building summary is 35.7 is based on summer of 2022, which is based on the April kind of referendum, based on timelines, do the bids and all that. So, you know, if I don't know how we go ahead if we don't have some type of deadline in front of us that we try and meet to the best of our ability. We may not meet it, but I think we got to push ourselves. People don't have a long, you know, they don't want this going on for, I would say, I don't want it for a year and a half because they're going to get sick and tired of it. It's like, when are you guys going to do something? That being said, there's a lot to do. I believe we can get it done and get the information to the council. But to do that, it does take more often than once a month.
Like I said a while back, I'd rather take the time and give the people 3 options. The palace, the mid one, and then the third Y option, and let the people decide about something like that. And to try and get that done by January, it's just not enough time to look at all the concepts and look at it realistically and form an opinion. And I think the best thing for the town is always to have an option.
And that's
You know,
right.
if we
That's
can
what
come up
we
with
want.
3 different sizes, say 170,000 to 145,000, and then have the wife and then give us a presentation, an idea of what they want to do.
Yeah.
As a third option, we can have a referendum. Let's pick, we want A, B, or C. That is certainly how I want to vote. Versus this is your only option, pick this, and then if they shoot it down, what are we going to do this all over again?
Well, again, that's the
I don't want
council
to do this.
decides
I
what
don't,
goes
it's gonna
to the
get dragged
referendum,
out.
but
You wanna
yes,
see
but we-
dragged out, take a look at what happened with the police station.
Yeah.
Okay, they could have gone in there with 3 different options. We probably would have had a new police station. It was square instead of looking like, you know, some kind of a fancy palace. They would have had a nice facility and it would have been for less money. Instead, we just kept going back and taking little bites. And I don't want to go through all that again. It's just crazy. Let's just give the people 3 decent options and let them pick the one they like. But that, you
Again,
can't do
that
that
would be the
in a couple
council
months.
to decide.
No, as an
But we
advisory
can-
committee,
advisory.
we can recommend to
We
council.
can recommend.
Hey,
three options
council,
to
we've done
council.
all our due diligence, and these are the three options that we suggest you, we
Yeah.
advise you to put out for referendum. Now, they could look at that and say, hey, you guys are all joking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
we
we're
just
not
throw
doing
it all
that,
out.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if this committee decides that, we do it.
Right.
In
And
the end,
if we do due diligence, we can give three solid options. I think that the people will pick one of them and go with.
Right.
And I'd rather see that than just go through all this again,
That's
because
fine.
honestly,
That's fine.
people are
So-
gonna choke on that big building.
Right, right.
I don't wanna see it lose over something stupid.
It was kind of done with the high school project.
What?
Had the different plans to move schools around, do different options for school,
Yeah,
high school. They didn't do that to some extent. You're right, I wish they could have a police station. That's not how our process usually works, but it would be nice.
maybe it's time to make the process work the way it should. And do it
Maybe
this
it's to
way.
hear from professionals too,
Yeah.
on how it should work. What would, I mean, let's hear from other people on how the process should work.
Yeah, I
Bring
mean-
them in.
I'd like to go see Newtown too.
Yeah.
That took a lot longer than everybody thinks to get that
Yes.
project done. That
Newtown was a
years and
very
years.
long process.
Hard to do.
Yes, I just wondered how our statement of need will fit in with this. I mean, if we're giving all these options, how we were asked to submit a statement of need and we did due diligence and we went over what we thought we needed. Now, if we're gonna say we're gonna do a smaller one and a medium one and a, I don't know how that is gonna fit in.
That was one of my questions too, thinking about that. We now have to go back to these two commissions and say you have to revise your statement of need for options.
Right. So for instance, like the gym,
Process, you know.
a gym is a good example, right? And these are fair comments we've heard from people. The conceptual design right now has the gym included. Our statement of need had a gym included. People say, do we really need a gym? Because maybe we have gyms in other schools. But then that's true. So what are the options? Well, I would look to this committee to look at those options. Can the town get time, in those gyms to prevent us from having to build?
These
That-
are things that
type
I'd
of
like to
thing.
look at, because there's
Absolutely.
something right there. I mean,
Right.
when
So
I
that's an
graduated high
example.
school, we used to have the men's basketball. And we played in the high school, I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday nights.
Yeah.
And it was from 7 to 9, we went and played basketball, we had a whole league. And shit, we were out, I played basketball.
Right, right. And- but- Right.
And it was great, and why isn't that option available now? Versus building another gym to do the same thing, where we have two gyms across the street from where we're gonna build a giant gym.
And that's great. So we can bring the AD in, talk about the town having the ability to use the gyms and all that. But that's what I'm saying. Those are good options to look at. And but you're still meeting the statement of needs that have been presented. We're just saying maybe the
We're just
option is
doing
to
it in different
use
places.
somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
But that was a great question, because I don't think it's our committee to change that statement in
No,
those
no,
statement
no,
of needs.
no.
Because they're already done. We know what we need.
Yep.
That's right. So,
Yeah, well, like you said before, the architects would stuff in there that. or it's a little bit. But it was, you know, running track.
We never even
There-
talked
so-
about.
And you raise running
The
track.
statement of need had two pools. One was called a therapy pool, which we view as a recreational pool. We took that and added, which is.
he had the third pool, which is a small, it shouldn't have been done, but he did
Yeah, the
that on his
statement
own.
of need, we did ask for a therapy.
Right, right,
pool, which we envisioned as something.
But then it became a way to go against.
Yeah. And then that made people crazy because they said we don't need three pools, you know?
I mean, Jeff did recommend we come up with some meeting dates so that you won't have.
I know this was the initial one that maybe there's a lot to discuss. I still think we should have one this month.
What about Thursday the 23rd or Monday the 26th?
Well, let me, is Jen absolutely necessary? And again, no offense, but if
I think you have to have a staff liaison. It's
Right.
Debbie and Tina, not the staff liaison. You can't force them to come to these meetings and you may not have one. I think not having one, not that Brendan
Right.
doesn't do a great job.
I'm
I think
okay
you
with
need
the,
one.
No, I agree. So can
27th
there
works
be,
for
should
you?
there be a delegate, though? There could be times when you can't make it anyway.
I think like that, yes, but if we're scheduling a meeting, I think we should try to schedule.
27th is Monday. Oh, no, we got, right. I got a phone.
So we did-
Okay, I'm good. 27th.
Yeah, I think we should do the 27th.
Monday, something.
You good with that one?
So, yeah. My daughter's having a C-section that day, so
Oh, good for you. Well,
if it's the 27th, we do the 23rd? If you can't, if the 15th doesn't work, does anything that week of the 15th work for anybody, like 13th?
No, that's economic development.
Yeah.
And you can't do Monday, the 20th, the commission on aging, unless you can during the day.
20th, 23rd.
Tuesday, the 28th.
28th, you said? You said the 28th, Jen?
I'm thinking council is the 7th and the 21st. So what about Tuesday, the 28th?
I'm okay with that.
Good.
28th.
Roughly, I think. Okay.
I can put it
Do you want, Brendan, do you want me to look at the next one? Try to get
Yeah,
some
I think
dates?
so.
You have them there,
Just
Jeff. Why don't you give them to them now?
No.
You're
this
gonna run
is
at
like
28th,
on-
all right?
This is like a commission on aging.
6 o'clock again?
6 o'clock, Tuesday, the 28th.
Yeah, 6 o'clock. We'll do it.
Okay, I'm gonna just warn you that you really have to be very careful about making sure that whatever you want to talk about is on the agenda.
Yep.
These are special meetings,
Right. So,
and especially as you start getting into some of the weeds, you want to make sure that you're doing it correctly.
Why are they all special? Because they invited you.
No, especially because they have to give me at least 30 days notice of, your schedule.
So
Okay,
should
so
we
that's why we have
do the
to look
schedule? Can we do a preliminary schedule now for meetings so that we don't have to do the special?
Yeah, if not, I just got a text from my mom's therapist. I
Yeah.
gotta go home. Help my mom. So I gotta head out. Can we set the schedule on the 28th for the rest of the
I
meeting?
can
You know,
set
you know,
up.
why don't just wait till the 28th?
Yeah.
To
Then
set
we
the
can all have
schedule.
it, yeah,
If that's okay, it's just
I
like,
can
we
come up
already
with a
picked the
rough draft.
28th, so we got one day.
He
So-
said we could email schedule. I'm just trying to get it so
Okay,
that
so-
everybody can plan their life
Right,
or
so-
whatever, right?
Yeah, if you
I'm
email
gonna-
us the schedule out during the month, maybe we can just give them yes and no's on some of the dates
Yeah.
that work.
Are we allowed to do that?
I would say you really need to make sure that you do it the right way. So on the 28th, you can
Discuss the
have
schedule.
as a backup, with your backup information, your list of your dates. And then that way, everybody, because it's then documented how you vote. The power of the emails is that technically they're supposed to be then like created into a set of minutes, and they never are. All right, so that's where it's not.
So can I do?
So my thought process, Dave, why don't you go?
Yeah, please, yeah.
But my thought process is whatever you want to talk about on the 28th, make sure Brendan knows about it. All right, or if you want it, I would say right now, email Brendan. And Brendan can work with Jen or myself. I'll help you in any way to do the schedule and to do the agenda.
Yeah.
All right.
I can send Brendan the rough draft of the schedule as his chairperson to submit with. Okay.
And then what will happen is that once the agenda is set, then you have your backup information like you did for tonight. All right, this all has to be posted on the website, but at least that way you have your information there, and you know going forward what would work. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right, and then if there's somebody that you want to invite on the 28th, you know, we can try to get them in here for the 28th, but then if you have an idea of another couple of the dates, you can also offer that. All right, just so that you have kind of like an idea going forward.
And if we want to go, like, if I want to go to take a ride from Newtown, and Brendan and I want to go, or Dave and I, we go down there and just start fact finding, and then we can put that on the agenda to report to the commission.
Well,
or to the
as
committee.
Jeff said to you earlier, it should probably come from the committee on the fact that you're going and who's going. But that if you do it as an individual, then, you know, they can take your information or they don't have to take yours.
Right, well, that's what I'm saying. If
Yeah,
we-
you can
if we
still
do it
go
that
and
way,
say,
we
hey,
can
by
just
the way, we
come to the
went.
meeting, put it on the agenda and say, we went to Newtown, this is the information we found.
Just call it site
Present it to them.
visits, and then anyone who went on a site visit could report back in.
Yeah.
So I would be very cautious again, because Jeff said to you that really you guys could agree on all these things.
Right.
So on the 28th, if you say, I want to go to see Newtown on the 15th of October,
Yeah.
is everybody happy with that? Is that okay? And they're all going to say yes,
Yeah,
but they're notified. And what I'm seeing happening, and it won't happen here, I know that, but sometimes people on, and it's happening on a commission right now, that the person in charge is doing everything and taking it over. And that's just not the way it's supposed to work. As the mayor very nicely said earlier, it's to make you guys agree on terms.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
The
just,
one thing about visits though is I really suggest, because you want to get the right people at the town, is that the staff would,
I think you would set everything up.
would
with
set up the
like
visits
concepts and all of them.
and then, you know, we determine who goes where or whatever, so.
And you may want to
We're
come up with
into
a set of your
it.
questions. You know, I
Right,
mean,
we haven't even gotten to the matrix, right?
so there may be where you at least want to have some bullet questions and I mean, no matter where you go. Okay, so like, I just said, you know, everybody knows the election last year was nuts and chaotic, and there's a representative going around, and he's from Greenwich, but he's so even keeled. I mean, he's trying to find out both the good and the bad, and what worked and what didn't work, so that he can, as a legislator, he has the information. And the town folks that I talked to about this are very impressed with him, because he's kind of doing the same thing wherever he goes. Now, something may come up and kind of goes, oh, I didn't know about that. But for the most part, it's very even keel. It's the same question. He's not pro or against. He's just trying to find out what happened and how to improve it. And that's what you want to do.
Right.
Well, could we say tonight to you, you know, if he has a date that he can go?
I don't think you should add
I
anything.
don't have one yet, I can wait till the 28th, but I
Oh,
just
all right.
want,
And I would like to
I
go to
also-
Newtown as well.
yeah, I want to find a few places that are, because there's got to be more than 3 places that I can look at. And I'll find them. I'll go online and I'll spend the
go
time
in my
and I'll find
database,
it.
my office, almost everything I printed was UAF jobs, Rocky Hill, Wyndham,
Yeah, the Rocky Hills, another one.
Brantford, Newtown.
Mansfield's been out there for 20 years. It's a good one to study for
Yeah,
knowing
Bloomfield, too.
problems that might come
I
up.
don't think you have a pool though.
Yeah, Mansfield.
Mansfield, oh, Mansfield does, that's right.
Absolutely.
I'm thinking of Blue.
They have, yes, Bloomfield.
Okay, so here's what I quickly wrote down off the top of my head for the agenda for next week. We'll go, we've got a couple things here we didn't really discuss, review the statement needs, right?
Yeah.
Maybe we invite Tom or Gary next time.
If he's available on the 28th,
I don't know. I
I
don't
know
wanna-
he's
There's a
going-
lot to talk about, so I don't want to make these things, there's a lot here tonight.
Yeah, I know he's going on vacation, because he wasn't gonna be able to do this for the Brown or something else like that.
So we have that possibility of matrix review. I don't know, if we bring in time at this point or wait for questions, but we can gather some more information.
I'm bringing it and not getting it out tomorrow.
And then we have a discussion about visits and what sites, and maybe set up some questions that we should bring. That's kind of thing that we're working on.
Sure.
Yeah, keep it- as we get
You
on.
are, but you want to be very careful with your special meetings.
And Brendan, I'll send you
If everybody
dates.
has anything else, yeah,
I'll send you a rough draft of
the dates.
dates and we'll take it from there. I'll look at all the schedules.
Review
and-
future
So
meetings.
you're gonna also have a motion to account for dates. You know, schedule things on all the time.
For
Yep.
regular meetings.
Yes.
And you might have also the approval of these minutes. into one of those
Now,
things.
does Brendan do the agenda?
Brendan could direct it. Now, he can, you know, I mean, you
Like,
can.
I do it for Parks and Rec, so I'm just not.
And then she
Like,
sends
if
it out
Barbara
in-
does it for Commission on Aging as the chairperson. So I'm just.
But
I've been on
everybody
commission
agrees.
for-
Everybody's input, so.
Yeah,
I don't wanna do
Whatever
it all by
you need,
myself.
just, you know.
Is it too early to talk about net overfunding? Wait until we start talking about like what we have. Yeah. What parameters do we want, you know, we can go in that.
Yeah, we can, try to.
I just, well, I guess I don't want to lose sight of like, where, it's not so much like, okay, here we go, money, but like, where else do we go funding besides grants, besides.
Yeah.
It'd be private sector stuff.
Right.
I, you know, we don't have to talk about it next meeting, but I don't want to decide that.
No, that's.
But we need a little more concrete numbers, I think, before we start going big.
Yeah.
No, they're not gonna want to hear, well, around.
Yeah.
You give us like a bunch of money, but that's somewhere around here.
Maybe have
Yeah.
something about types of outreach.
Right.
That way we'll-
The grant,
Yeah.
national database that we have access to. here in-
I have I've never
So
heard about it, so.
I met with Kevin and actually, I don't think he's still on, but he's gonna have someone on his staff start to look, just to get a feel for things. There's all different places. Like he mentioned, we're doing a bridge, a $600,000 project. And someone on the staff found this grant for $100,000 from the National Wildlife Foundation. And Chris Edge went to Long Island. Who would ever think that that would support bridge construction? But very quickly, we put in community center. You should have seen all these things come up. Now, he did say you have access, you might not have a password, but
I don't even know what
that's
it
something
is.
that, staff should be looking at now. And
Some ADA things.
I would ask that they start
Yeah.
looking at those things now.
ADA or,
So
yeah,
could we ask the staff to do that?
sure.
And again, Kevin,
Yeah, I never heard of it, so.
Yeah, we have to put that through a vote. So that's on the agenda, that's one, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. Okay.
That was Kevin Delaney.
can we just ask
Yeah,
staff?
Kevin,
I've already asked.
That's
But you might want to
pretty
touch base with Kevin, just to,
Follow up. So I can learn myself. Okay.
Where are we at?
Okay.
Where are we at,
I
Ross?
guess we'll,
Are we on number 12?
motion to
Yeah.
adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
so we're not gonna look at the matrix at all
I
tonight.
know, we'll do
We'll
that.
have that- we'll have that for next week.
We'll do that.
Going across, there's a bunch of, I'm like you, oh geez, I look at this town, so I just kept on adding names going across, and you can see a couple of pages. But there are others, so,
I said we bring-
Okay,
I want to look at the size.
motion on the table.
Similar size.
Adjourn. All in
I'm
favor?
sorry, who moved to adjourn? And who seconded?
I said.
All those in favor? Okay, motion to adjourn. Thanks, everybody.
Wow, that was fun.